Join me as I chat to Colin Bell, one of the pioneers of luxury conservation-focused safaris across Africa. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another podcast with Stanley Safaris. I'm very honored to be joined by Colin Bell. And to give you an intro, Colin is one of the pioneers of luxury and experience-focused tourism within Africa. And we'll go through that history shortly. But what is very important is that when he started out in the late 70s, early 80s, conservation and community was at the forefront of what they were doing. So, Colin, thank you so much for joining me. It's an honor to spend this time chatting to you.
Pleasure, Sean. Lovely to see you again, and look forward to our chat.
Great. So yes, as I said, one of the pioneers of luxury tourism in Africa with a focus on experience and conservation. Talk us through those very early days back in the late 70s, early 80s. I was a child back then. I was exploring Namibia and Botswana with my parents, wild camping on an island in the Okavango Delta, tracking elephants on foot through the wetlands. We didn't have a guide or a rifle, but that's what we did back then. And I'm sure that's how you got into it. You were a guide and you were exploring these extremely wild places back then. How did it start for you?
So I ended up with an economics degree from Wits.
Sure.
And what I did know on day one is that Economics 101 was boring. And my second lecture was Law 101, and it was even more. And so we ended up hating what we were doing, and we started to get a whole lot of other credits, geology, geography, and all that type of stuff. And then we got this Combi, Volkswagen Combi, which had come all the way through Africa and had those elliptical license plates from Germany. Yeah. And so we had the German plates on the one side, and we could flip it over, and we had the Johannesburg plates on the other. And it allowed us to go and travel. And we just traveled to all these remarkable places. So when I left university, finished up my degree, first job, literally, I ended up working for a safari company. Never had a proper formal job in my life. And I was sent off to Maun.
Sure.
And boy, I had to go and sink or swim. And then that was 77. And those days, it was literally a Series 3 Land Rover, 8 people in one Series 3 Land Rover, a trailer at the back, and then all the luggage on the top, including a 25-liter plastic black sort of container filled with red wine.
Yeah.
On the roof. We didn't know anything about wine, and we thought that any wine was good. And the fact that this wine was boiling every day and then freezing at nighttime and boiling every day, and every morning we'd have a headache, we'd wonder why.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was.
Yeah.
And with no fridges, we used to hang those socks on our mirrors, and that was how we used to cool down beers to a reasonable status. And that was safaris. It was incredibly rough and ready. I met my partner, Chris McIntyre, in 78. He arrived in Botswana, same type of story, looking for adventure. And we worked for the safari company for until 82. And then we said to our bosses, something's wrong here. The winds of change are sweeping through Africa. You can't have a South African company and enjoying the fruits of Botswana when you're only paying 2 pula, which in those days was probably not even $1 a day, to go and visit their parks. All the money was staying in South Africa, all the jobs are South African. And it was wrong. We felt it deep down. And this is long before South African democracy. And we went to our boss and said, listen, things need to change. We'll go and set up a business for you in Botswana. It'll be yours. We'll run it for you. We were looking for a salary of 750 Rand. In those days, that was about $100 or $200 a month. And we said, we'll give you that 5-year contract, CPIX. That's all you've got to do. And he said, Botswana's days were over.
Sure.
It'll never, ever have the pinnacle of what it is today. And he said, no, and he'll never do it. Anyway, he said, we're going to resign if you don't. And cut a long story short, we resigned. He predicted that we would never make it. It turned out that we hit the sweet spots. We had to do everything better. And we had almost no money. So we kind of fell into this community story by accident, because we had been working for 5 years. I had saved up 2,500 Rand, which in those days, call it $800. Chris had saved up the same amount. We had one old finished Land Rover Bucky. And that is what we started with. So we had to share. And the only way we could share is to go to people who had land, and we would work how to share. And we learned quickly that by sharing, you got better, and you could offer more, and you got into private areas. And when we expanded it into Namibia and to Zimbabwe later on, that kind of culture of sharing was really in our system. Go find someone who's got a piece of land, go and lease it from them. And in Namibia, it was important because it was chaos over there. And you had all these black rhinos out in the community areas, and there was no revenue for the communities. And so there was quite a bit of poaching. The old South African Defence Force had been in there and they were poaching. And so we started the model of sitting down with communities and saying, right, what have you got? You've got incredible chunks of land. What do we have? We've got the ability to bring tourists, and let's combine all our different assets to see how we could make it work. There were no blueprints. There was no, we couldn't go to over there and work out what worked and what didn't work. So we were always experimenting. And what we learned is that every community is different. Every single deal you put together has got different constraints. So you never, ever go in with a fixed thing, except you could learn. Number one, you had to put down guaranteed money. So if there were no tourists, the community still got something.
Okay.
Setting aside their wildlife. And I think that was part of the problem in the Mara in the early days, is that the Mara system was based on $45 for a tourist in a bed. If there was lots of tourists, they made lots of money, but if there were no tourists, there was nothing.
Yeah.
So there wasn't regular income for the Maasai to go and set aside their, send their kids to school or get food. So they had to do other things, and wheat fields developed in the Mara, and that, okay, it's all changed. But that was the earliest lesson.
Yeah.
To pay a fixed amount, guaranteed whether we had a tourist or not, and then we paid a percentage of turnover. And that model kind of has worked for everything we've done. We always make sure, even during COVID, our concessionaires in Botswana, I mean, the one lease we've got is something like, I'll do it in dollar terms, but it's around about $400,000 on the 1st of January, whether you have one booking or 1,000.
Yeah.
So
that's the commitment.
That's the 1st of January, but then over and above is the percentage of turnover and all the other stuff you've got to do. So and that's guaranteed money is what sets these community projects aside. When they know they've got guaranteed money and they've got an upside because of good occupancies. So that during COVID, I mean, we gave out something like 1 million food parcels to all our communities, and our poaching levels were almost zero.
Sure.
Because of that partnership.
Yeah.
But the partnership had roots going back to the 80s. And it was kind of like, we did learn then how to make things kind of work and muddle. And we tried this and that worked and this didn't. And you kind of developed the principles. But the basic thing is guaranteed cash up front so that the folks there know that the wildlife is a real asset. It's not an asset in good years and a non-asset in bad years. So that principle is what's key to all our projects as much as we can. And it's a really healthy one. So the risk is transferred away from the communities to the private sector, where it should be.
Yeah.
You can't go to a landlord of an apartment and say, listen, I want to rent your apartment for a year, but I'm only pay for the 100 days I'm staying there. Landlord would laugh.
Yeah.
So that thing, we committed for the year, we committed to pay the cash, and we gave the upside. That partnership is kind of really what has worked for us over the years has been fantastic.
So you went in there, you started these camps, you grew. How, as just the two of you with a minimum budget, how did you get the tourists to come into your camps initially?
Well, the problem was that Botswana, in particular, was nowhere. East Africa dominated in the 70s and 80s. That was the safari place. First of all, we had to create a marketing campaign for the destination. So that was our big issue. And in those days, if you went from one log camp to another, there were very few, but they all hated each other.
Yeah.
And we said, stop this. We first of all market the destination. Let's create the destination. We managed to get National Geographic to come out, and they did an entire edition on Botswana.
Sure.
And it was fun. And then we had people like that famous photographer, begins with the L. Anyway, wrote the iconic book. It's over there. I'll have a look now. And so those are the kind of things. So we were able to start putting Botswana out there
on the map.
Destination, because governments, as usual, governments are not good at marketing. It doesn't matter what they say, big budgets, they talk, but they don't really market. And it came down to us as an industry, forgetting about our competitive nature between us, let's sell the destination. And then after that, the marketing will determine, and your efforts and your quality of experience will determine it. So we started with these mobile safaris. Then we quickly went into bird watching. And what we didn't realize is that bird watching was a massive, massive industry.
Yeah.
Our first safari we put out with Ken Newman was sold within, and we put it out there. We could take 16 people, and the price from Joburg, flying up to Maun, a week in the Okavango Delta, flying back to Maun, and then back to Joburg, all inclusive for a week was about 990 Rand. In those days, it was probably about $50 for the entire week, including air.
Yes.
Can you imagine? Just to 50.
Yeah.
We said, oh, hang on, here's a new market. Yeah. And so then we got Jeff Lockwood and Peter Stan and all these top birding guys of that era to come and be the. And then we expanded it. And this is where I love with what you guys are doing. It is about experience.
Yeah.
So you have a great destination. You have the top expert, and then us behind the scenes. You're sort of standing next to Ken Newman. We'd be out in the front looking at a bird. And, we're there every day. So we know every bird.
Yeah.
Because you wake up and it's your whole day.
Yeah.
Whereas these popping up. Colin, what's that bird? Bird. And so this was that combination of our local expertise plus these sort of profile guides.
Yeah.
Profile experts. And then we had people like Bob Scholes who did ecology stories and all the rest of it. And so what really came about is that the experience was what it was all about, and doing it better. Space, open spaces, large tracts of absolutely pristine Africa.
Yeah.
And so we learned quite early on that privacy was also a very important thing. So the partnership model, privacy was critical.
Yeah.
And over time, as the destination got known and all the sort of public areas got sort of more and more frequented, we hated seeing a tourist, except for my old company.
Yeah.
They had really terrible vehicles. At the time, we could have vehicles. We had a fridge in the back, no more mirrors, the rest of it. So every time we saw them, our tips went up. So it was, and they didn't last that long. But it was just doing things, making sure that every element of the trip, from start to finish, was superb. And that's with the commitment, sharing, privacy, way out of space. Things like in those days, leopards. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
We hadn't learned to track leopards. We hadn't learned, in those days, the books. If I showed you Brzezinski's bird book, and this is before Newman started writing this, and he got the idea of Birds of Botswana and stuff like that. But the book was Brzezinski's. You looked at Brzezinski's bird, and you'd have this thing, and you have the bird sitting on the branch here, and you're trying to work out this. They don't match up.
No match, yeah.
No, you're looking at X on the book. So they weren't books. And then the book started. Yeah. So I think like leopards, oh my goodness, we didn't realize that chattering over there and this chirping over there meant leopards. So it was hard work. We had to start and explore and find and really, and then the art of tracking came through. And, these things over time develop because we started as raw and rough and ready and a huge adventure. Can you imagine somebody coming out of San Francisco or Minneapolis or something like Africa and going to Botswana in those days? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's just hardy customers. So how do we get word of mouth?
Yeah.
Marketing campaign, word of mouth. And then once the word of mouth had got out there, some of the operators started to sell Botswana, and not only just Kenya, but also Botswana. One of those things slowly, little bit by little bit, it got slightly better and better.
And so that lasted, you were there for what, 30 odd years as part of Wilderness?
Yeah, no, I was there. It's still a small shareholder. I'm not. I sold my shares in 2006, so that is 20-something years, nearly 25 years or so.
Okay.
And 25 years in the hot seat. And then remember, we started at zero, so you're working You know, safari, but you're just thinking about the next booking and your next this and that. And, you know, oh my goodness, it was hectic. 25 years of real, and I needed a break. And so I sold my shares to the staff. They went and listed it, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So interesting times.
And then you took a bit of time out, or was it straight into, okay, let's get natural selection going?
No, surprisingly, I started Great Plains.
Okay. Yes. All right. Yes, you're part of that.
Was to actually go straight from one to the other. But we really wanted to get a good conservation organization, and then National Geographic bought in there. And once National Geographic got in, the corporate life got hectic. So I was the CEO there for 5 years. And then I needed time out. I really needed the time out. So this was over 30 years on the, and every customer, every agent's got your number as the emergency number. So you get phoned at ridiculous hours on even the smallest things, you know, on a Sunday morning, it's at 7 o'clock, the airplanes have landed in Joburg, and I get a phone call. Hello, my name is Joey. What? Joburg.
Oh dear.
I took time out, and then we did a number of books. We did the one on the good, the bad, and the ugly of the tourism industry. And then in time, we did The Last Elephants, and we just recently done the book, and these are with Smithsonian. We did The Last Lions, really, and that's really what kept me going. And then we started natural selection by accident. And about 8-9 years ago, I went to lunch with Dave van Smeerdijk and one of our old partners at Wilderness. And we're just having a catch up. How's it? How are you doing? He said to me, you know, Colin, I've got a share of this lodge in Botswana, and I don't know what to do with it. You know, you can't market one lodge.
Yeah.
It's just the costs are so big. You know, you've got to be in every market, every country, every destination. And I said, my goodness, you know what? I've got this commitment, which I've given in 2002 to a community down on the Wild Coast in South Africa at a place called Mkombati. And I said, I've made them a promise.
Yeah.
And I'm stuck. And I've got the one lodge. He says, I've got the one. We just put it together. So that's what we did. We put the two together, and the word got out so quickly that we were back together again.
Okay.
And it came our way. Oh my goodness, there's extraordinary gems.
Yeah.
And sometimes a dog with no potential, when we'd say no. And then sometimes there was a dog with huge potential. We knew the geography, but it was run really poorly, these chunks of land. And then we quickly recruited. So it was Dave and then his wife, Jen Lally. She's a PhD. She's an environmental scientist. She did a PhD in the Skeleton Coast. Sure. So and she runs our foundation. And this is a critical part of our works. And then we recruited our CEO, James Ramsey, also ex-Wilderness. We'd known. So the four of us knew we'd been in the industry for over 100 years collectively. And so we had the connections. We put the word out, guys, we're starting natural selection. And the key thing, what we learned is that we couldn't be a cookie cutter company. We had to be a portfolio of family run businesses. So we created this little fund. We went to our friends, we created this little fund, and we bought a little share in all the different businesses. But we made sure that the original entrepreneur was going to run the business in doing the stuff they do. Now, what happens, Sean, you've seen this many times. The guys have come through, they start a little business and they're guiding and they're doing this, like doing everything. But you end up doing stuff you don't like. You hate the finances. You hate the human. I mean, they drive you mad.
Yeah.
And processes, and as we've got into a more professional industry and you've got all these processes, these licenses you've got to do. Yeah. So we said to them, okay, what do you like doing? What are you good at? And what do you hate? And so we went to people like Ralph Barsfield from Uncharted Africa. Now, Ralph is brilliant as a guide.
Yeah.
He's brilliant with training. He's brilliant with certain things. But he's the world's worst marketer. He's the world's worst mechanic. He's the world's... And he was trying to do the stuff he was bad at. And what happens is it takes you so much more time because you're not good at it. So all we said to Ralph, okay, what do you want to do? So we bought a portion of his business. He sold us a portion. And he's still the chair of the business. So he does the guide training. He guides. And he looks after standards and he designs all those things he loves. Yeah. Everything else we take. we do the res, we do the marketing, we do the finance, we're doing the procurement, all this type of stuff. And so we end up with this model where the original proprietor now, I mean, Ralph's business had been going for 30 years and they'd never declared a dividend, never. So we came in, we took all the stuff, we recapitalized the business, new vehicles, this and that, rebuilt the camps, etc., to his design, not our design.
Yeah.
And for the first time in 33 years, he's had a dividend.
Yeah.
Who's got the biggest smile on the planet? Ralph. Ralph's got this huge smile because he's doing the stuff he loves.
Yeah, he's shining.
All the way through. So, and we make sure that we ring fence. Ralph's lodges do this. The choir ones do that. And everyone's different. So people go from one camp to the other and say, but there wasn't this kind of, I didn't know I was in the same company.
Yeah, that's important.
That everyone has got their entrepreneur's footprint stamped heavily on those lodges. And everyone is different, and we love that. So it's basically a portfolio of family-run businesses. We now control something like 1 million hectares of prime land. It wasn't. The land we inherited was dog.
Yeah.
We knew the geography, and that is the advantage of being in the industry for so long, is that we understood geography. And what was a dog now, which could be prime. And so we obviously selected those, and off we went. And we really now, we ran 30 different lodges in Namibia, Botswana, and 2 in South Africa. And really they all, this one in Namibia along the edge of Etosha, when you see what it was desert, desolate. It was bleak. It was badlands. And today it's 50,000 hectares of amazing countryside. It's now the southern boundary of Etosha. It morphed into a hunting reserve, and there wasn't, doesn't matter what the hunting guys say, but it didn't have the ability to generate the jobs and nor the return to the owners. So that place is 50,000 hectares. It's got over 100 rhinos. It's got, well, they don't have buffalo, so it doesn't have the big 5. It's got the big 4. The the lion population, I think there's something like 60 different lions there, all from nothing. And when you look at the pictures from what it was, and we love that transforming of taking a real dog and making it into the complete and absolute wonderful piece of pristine Africa. And it's that transformation which drives us. So what we've done is in our portfolio, we've got a bunch of shareholders. We're only in it for the long term. We started, and we went to our friends and said, guys, we're starting up. And we had all these guys say, yes, I'm in. And one guy gave us amount of grief on our first board meeting. When you're starting out, it's always a bit lumpy. And so we paid him his money back, and we said, no, this is a long-term business. We've now, in the 8 years we've been going, we've done $6 million for conservation. $6 million.
Wow. And
our shareholders have not had a return. But what we do know is that, so we keep reinvesting the profits into the business. We're growing the business. But the conservation side of things is crucial. We love that Patagonia, the 1% for the planet. Said we have to be 1.5%. We have to be 50 better than Patagonia. 1.5% of our money, which goes into our foundation.
Yeah.
And we have what we created, what we call our CCR, Conservation Community and Reserve. So we have 2 portions. We have an accommodation portion, and we have the CCR. And that goes into the foundation, the CCR. Plus the 1.5% of our money. So that $6 million is not guest donation. That's our money, which should have normally gone back to shareholders.
Yeah.
But we put it into conservation. And what we do know, and what we've learned so well, and this is repeated, the more good you do, the more good comes back to you.
Yeah.
So even though the shareholders haven't got a return, the value of the company is exponentially. So we've got such a good bunch of shareholders who just love the vision. And they know in time it's going to really be phenomenal for them. So they're not concerned. Board meetings are an absolute shareholder meetings, complete privilege with all these really hyper enthusiastic people who are just urging us to go more, and make it happen. So, it's kind of this, it goes back to the old model. It's, and most of the, out of the 30, probably 90% of them all have direct shareholders or shareholdings or boardroom level communities where is the core. So it's going back to the sharing model we learned, sort of nearly 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And sharing which just kind of makes it work. So our neighbors, and as I said earlier, this whole story during COVID, these folks were intricately involved in our business. And I mean, a lot of companies laid off huge amounts of people and took cuts. We just took varying cuts. If you're at the sort of bottom of the rung, you know, we had a smaller cut. The maximum cut was 30%. So we still paid salaries and all the rest of it to see us through. And we were able to survive COVID and make sure at the same time as surviving as a business that our area survived. And that's why the food parcels came in.
Yeah.
And the food parcels were, so every family every week got a fat amount of food. They didn't go starving. And so it's that kind of sharing thing. Yeah. And it's kind of, when I see some of the stuff which is going on in the Mara and that, it's just me, and it's got not the long term, drives me mad. Yeah. And yet when you do share, you know, the good things come.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I saw that more so in Zimbabwe. I found Zimbabwe to be a little bit better in terms of the sharing and promoting the destination as a whole, as opposed to Botswana. But, you know, you had that back in the early days. And I think probably Zimbabwe did that because they came out of such a hard time when Mugabe was in there. But yeah, you know, definitely working together for the better good is definitely the way to go. With regards to your foundation, how do you work that, given that you've got these 30 different properties or areas? How do you work out where you're going to put the resources in terms of the foundation, the community, and the conservation work?
Yeah, so we have a couple of key principles. First of all, the board of the foundation has got Jen Lally and 2 independents. So how's that? We get voted out. So every application has to be done on its and viewed as on its merits. We have that it's around about 70% of the cash from a lodge must go to that area, and the other 30% can go to that area, or it can go to greater good. So the trustees evaluate, they meet 3 times a year, 4 times a year, whatever it is, and they evaluate case by case. But we have the basic foundations, 70% or something like that, particularly around our areas. And remember that when we employ something like 1,300 people now, and most of those people come, I think it's 95% of those people come from around that area. So the amount of poverty in these rural areas is immense. Yeah. And there's so much work in those areas to really enhance them and make them better, or to put into the communities to make their lives better, be it schools, whatever it is. And just generally, even things like the old grandmothers and giving them solar panels in their huts at night, you know, these simple things like that, which in a normal society is easy, but out in the middle of nowhere, that's such a huge thing. The fact that an old gogo can have lights. Yeah. You know, so the money gets a portion according to need, but there is that split. And what we do love is we do love the big picture. So one of the biggest problems is that the Okavango has been great for all of us, all 4 of our founders. You know, we've had such a fantastic life because of that. And in the world today, we've got the Okavango. I mean, it's such a celebrated World Heritage Site, such a celebrated Ramsar site. But the reason why it's there today was because of civil war in Angola. We had Ita and Savimbi controlling the whole of southeast Angola, where the source waters are. Yeah. So the problem we've got in the Okavango is it's a desert, basically. Yeah. Yes, it's often like this year, we've got extraordinary rains, but that's one in every 10, 15 years you get decent rain. You know, Botswana is a country which is a dry country, which sometimes gets rain. Yeah. But for the rest of the years when there's no rain, it's a drought. And you've got the Okavango feeding in from the highlands of Angola, which is moist. Yeah. And for decades, Savimbi made sure that nothing happened in the headwaters of the Okavango. He had his base at Jumper, a lot of fighting going on there and all the rest of it. So there was no developers, no loggers, no this, no that. The entire Okavango system was sanitized. So the rain would fall in Angola, and year in, year out, the floods would come down and fill up the capacity, and the Okavango would be there. Yeah. So what happens today Today, we got real trouble because there's peace. So, ironically, the greatest savior of the Okavango Delta was civil war in Angola. Now that there's peace, every single logger, every single miner, every single farmer is eyeing all those waters and those fertile lands.
Yeah.
The Okavango is under immense threat.
Sure.
Made a decision. So talking about the 30%, we've made a decision at Natural Selection that we are going to go and see what we can do to create value from nature. At the moment, the Angolan economy is oil and oil and oil. And there's, Luanda's way away from Southeast and all the rest of it. And most of the politicians have never even been there.
Yeah.
I mean, only up until recently, we had Steve Boys and his incredible team of researchers, and they linked up with National Geographic, and they've now gone and literally walked and paddled and canoed and makoroed every one of those rivers coming out of the central Angolan highland. And I mean, they've done something like 6,000 kilometers of time on foot and makoro, working out where rivers are going and all the rest of it. So they've done amazing work at opening it up. Yes, we could have a look on Google.
Yeah.
Google, so you can get, but nobody really knew until them. Yeah. So now they've got together and they created a foundation for the source lakes. But between the source lakes in Botswana and Namibia, where it comes through, there's nothing except this extraordinary amount of food. So if you look at sort of Southern Africa, Botswana, and to a certain degree, Namibia and Zim have got all the animals, but very little of the food. Angola has got all the food, but none of the animals, because when you have a civil war, you have to keep your troops happy. And how do you keep your troops happy? You make sure that they're not starving. How do you make sure they're not starving in a civil war? You've got to go and base yourself in a national park, and you shoot animals every day. So today there's nothing there, nothing. So they've got all this food, and what we really have to do is we have to reopen up the old migration corridors between Botswana, the Okavango, and all the way into southern Angola. And then we'll have the natural transitions and transfers, and the migration corridors need to be secured. So a project there, we've literally in the phases now, it's been 2 years in the making. We're about to get approved by the Angolan governments and authorities and ministries, which will create a 250,000 hectare Big Five game reserve.
Wow.
We need cash for that just to get it going. So we take a portion of our 30% for these type of big picture projects. And it might not just be Angola, it might be anywhere. So that portion there. So we now well on our way to proving to the Angolan governments that their next oil field is actually nature-based tourism. We've tied up with the guy, Stefan van Wyk. He's been in Angola for 30 years. He used to do our flying in Namibia. He ran a charter company in Namibia, but then moved to Angola, married into an Angolan family, got Angolan kids. And he started something in the gap between the source lakes, where the National Geographic Steve Boys guys are, and the Delta itself. So we're going to be in the middle. And Stefan's right there. And last year, he introduced the first 16 elephants. And he trucked them in from Namibia. And we expected these elephants just to go.
Yeah.
They arrived. Can you imagine being an elephant from Namibia?
Coming.
Gosh.
Nothing. Yeah.
And they find unlimited water, unlimited food. These are the happiest elephants on the planet, and they haven't moved. They ride around his little camp in the middle of
no competition, nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely. Happiest elephants on the planet. Wow. So this is the kind of stuff we've got to do those things. We've got to go and show the Angolan government that nothing is actually extraordinary value. And I think where the world tourism is going, people are living in these crowded places. Can you imagine living in Hong Kong or New York or where? Oh my goodness. And you get stuck in COVID and you can't move out of your apartment and you've got this massive open place, 250,000 hectare private game reserve. So that's what our focus is now. Obviously we've got lots of regional stuff around our areas and they continue. And one of our biggest problems is that we don't have hospitality schools, we don't have environmental education processes for our kids in our rural areas. So we've got to continue. We've got to really focus on the next generation. We've got to focus on the education, their well-being, the Gogo's well-being.
Yeah.
We also have to have these, what we call, I think what is that Colin's book? The Big Hairy Audacious Goals. That's it. in that book, Good to Great. They talked about every company's got to have a big, hairy, audacious goal. BHAGs. So our BHAG, we've got a number of them.
Yeah.
But Angola is one of them. So, and
amazing.
Do it. It's we've got to save the Okavango Delta, and we're going to hope that we're going to be joined by a lot of our competitors up there, and we can create from 250,000, maybe we can create millions of hectares, and we can create the next Samara type thing.
Yeah.
But without people, without tourists, too many, just the right number.
And how much knowledge is there on what did occur there before the war in terms of wildlife and movements and migration routes and things like that? How much knowledge is out there about that?
Well, remember that the Civil War started. Almost, it started in the 70s. 76 was the first foray, and then the Battle of Cuitaconavale and all that was just 87, 88. And that's when everything got chomped and eaten. Now, besides a few East African researchers, Ian Douglas Hamilton, Cynthia Moss, there wasn't that much research.
Yeah.
In these far off places, nobody really knew.
Yeah.
We know today when you go in there, you've got perfect food, perfect water, and no animals. So the case of what was there previously, we can, there's good science. And in fact, the DNA process now, which has just been done, where they can take a sample of soil from an area which is like a dip, where all the waters and the sediment have kind of brought the sediment into, and they take a core sample there, and they can work out from the DNA in there what animals used to occur there hundreds of years ago.
Jeez.
So guided by that process, we've got to get this thing done. Then we're going to have to fence it because we've chosen a chunk of land with no communities. We don't have to move a single person, but there will be people around us. So if we're going to bring in lions and elephants and buffalo, the rest of it, we've got to fence it. And then hopefully in time we can expand it and we take down the fences to make it bigger and bigger. But to start off with, we've got to make sure that our neighbors are safe. So it's going to be fenced.
Yeah.
And so to focus right there. And then in that process, we're going to, obviously we knew there were elephants, there were buffalo, et cetera. We will then start the reintroduction process and then over time build the lodges, et cetera.
Sure.
It's a big...
Yeah, I mean, and that's exciting. Wow, that must be such a rewarding thing to be part of something like that. So well done. But you guys currently have this expedition style trip where you take helicopters from Botswana all the way up the Delta and you go up into that catchment area. Is that still something you do?
Yeah, no, it's it's been fascinating. So around the catchment area where Steve and they were real modern day adventurers. There's not many places who really do this type of expedition. And they were literally expeditioning without support. There are no roads. I mean, they've now got one track into one of the source lakes where they've got a base, and there was a little bunch of villages at a place called Tempui to the south of the source lakes. And they've that's their base today, and they've got this little track. But most of these source lakes don't have roads. You can't get there. So to drive up, you can do a really nice self-drive through kind of western central Angola, but this part is pioneering country. So elected not to become a normal DMC or lodge owner in most of Angola. We want to focus on this chunk of land. We may do something with African parks on the southwest corner, which is Iona National Park. We've got Shipwreck, and the idea is if we can have Shipwreck and we can tie it in with something just across the border in Angola, that could be good. And the African Parks, as you know, extraordinary organization. We love them to bits. And if we can be part of them and help them and to make the whole of the Iona sustainable, it'll have people living in there. And these are the Himba relatives, who most of them have hardly seen an outsider until very recently when Stefan started going, now African Parks is there. But we really focus on the source, between the source and the Okavango, because that's where stuff needs to happen. So we take a helicopter, but first we've got to send fuel up. So there's the Halo organization. They're the guys who've been doing the demining, and they've got these massive trucks. So we've got to send fuel up there because it's so far, and helicopters need fuel. And then you've got these blow-up kayaks, and you go from source lake to source lakes. And there's places nobody's ever been. And you drop in.
Yes.
hiking, you go exploring, and these type of things. So it's a fantastic thing. And then what we do is we follow the Angolan waters from the source all the way down through Angola, past Namibia, into the Okavango, and then through the Okavango into the Kalahari, where the final waters peter out. We call it from the source to the sands. And so follow the rivers all the way on a journey. It's extraordinary. But helicopters are expensive, and the supply, because there's nothing there. I mean, we had, it's real pioneering country. It's complete and absolutely.
How do I sign up for that?
Bring your checkbook.
Very thick one.
Helicopters, I mean, it's unbelievably expensive. Yeah. So it's the wealthiest of the wealthiest, sadly.
Yeah.
But once we got Stefan's place, we'll be able to do. Then we'll have a base. We'll have an airfield there, and it doesn't have to be helicopters. And then we'll maybe have helicopters there and shorten the distances. The price will come down. So it's a case of just waiting. And it'll become available.
Yeah, amazing. Have you done it? You've been up there?
Yeah, a whole bunch of times. No, it's frontier country. It reminded me of going back in 1977, arriving and going to these places in the Okavango Delta, where you, just besides the handful of Bai Mokoro paddlers, I mean, these were the bone of the tourism industry in Botswana, remarkable people. They were born in the Delta. They understood the ways long before. I mean, I learned everything I know about the Okavango was from these amazing Bai people who, their ancestors, they've been there for hundreds of years. And they literally know the ways and means of the Delta. They've seen it through huge floods, through droughts. They know every little inch. And those folks know how to live with the land, and from that, they can track. So the most extraordinary tracking things I've seen. And we weren't allowed to, because most of the Okavango is Moremi. And in those days, I mean, you weren't allowed to take rifles. So we'd be on foot and just using the skills of those folks to keep us safe. And over time, we kind of picked up a portion of their skills. We can't even do more than a portion.
It's a lifetime of skills that they've grown up with.
And I mean, you can put the most experienced guides around, and they still learn from those guys. That's quite amazing. So we learned from them, and they had they just knew. I mean, the one guy, I'll never forget him, Sarako. He was kind of like the old man master, and he'd been in a vehicle before, and he'd got gored as a youngster. That's just for a story. When we opened up Mambo, I said, Sarako, come. We took him to Mambo, and I put him in a vehicle. He'd never been in a vehicle before. And because of his incident with the buffalo, where he should have died, I mean, he's had this massive scar. The buffalo gored him when he was a youngster and threw him out. I mean, the guy's just, the only reason he survived is because he's so tough. He put him into one of our game drive vehicles. We're driving around Mambo. Came around this corner, and there was this old Duggar boy, old buffalo. And we just drove up to this buffalo, as you do on the game drive. For him, first time in a vehicle, never understanding the boundaries of the buffalo versus the buffalo in a vehicle. He absolutely pooped himself, and he just kept it because I was sitting here and he was there, and he kind of just saw this thing and it was coming on his side. For him, it was fear. It just disappeared to the back of the vehicle. He cowered down in fear, and I had a good laugh. So what do we do next time we're out Mokoro? We sense there's something going on there, and we could smell a carcass. So snuck up on Mokoros, and we this dead hippo. And once you get dead hippo, all the crocodiles come. And this bugger knew he was
payback.
Sneaking up on this buffalo, and there's clucks, and he's very quiet. And he says, Colin, look. And he kind of goes like this, and I look down. And there's this monster. Remember, in a Mokoro, he's at the back. And I'm
standing,
And he can see exactly what's going on. And he said, go on, look. And I look down there, and there's this monster 14-footer right here. And he's put me on top of it. And I absolutely pooped myself. And he thought it was the funniest thing. And we got back to camp that night, and the stories around the camp, the guys, they were chatting way into the middle of the night, laughing like crazy. And turned the odds around and got me back for making him scared of the buffalo. But that's the kind of thing these guys, I mean, can you imagine? And the water's only, 2.5, and a 14-foot crocodile is a big chunk of that. But he knew exactly the front of the Makoro goes up a little bit like this with that bow. He put me just at the right spot. He knew exactly how he could go. And I absolutely hooked myself to the nth degree. I mean, you can have 14-foot croc right here.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he just gently paddled back, we extracted the croc, didn't even know we were there.
Yeah.
That's what they were. And that's what they were. These are extraordinary guides, trackers. They could take into a group of elephants, get a great view, maybe climb up a tree, maybe let them around you, whatever it is, and then extract without them even knowing you're there. And without a weapon. Yeah. Just extraordinary bush skills.
Knowledge,
Wonderful people.
Yeah. So, Colin, tell us about Kwekwe, because that's a very special place for you, and you mentioned it earlier. What is it? Tell us about that.
So this is South Africa. It's the Wild Coast, sort of south of Durban, north of East London. It's the first provincial game reserve which is now owned by a community in South Africa. And it came about because in 1920, the government of the time, the colonial government, needed to find the next leprosy colony. And the Anglican Church had been in there, and they'd kind of provided a bit of a refuge for leprosy sufferers. And the South African government said, okay, this is the ideal spot. They went around the country. The Karoo was too hot in summer, too cold in winter. And they said, no, this is the perfect spot, not too hot in summer, not too cold in winter, benign climate. And they shunted everybody out of 17,000 hectares and moved them inland. In the new South Africa, then when leprosy was cured, it became a TB hospital. And then in 1977, they created a game reserve out of it. They introduced wildlife back, but non-dangerous game, no elephants, all the plains game. And then in the new South Africa, post-1994, if you were thrown off your land after the Land Act, there was a draconian Land Act of 1913. And it's that anybody who's thrown off their land after 1913, you could claim to get your land back. So now we've got a provincial game reserve, which is 100% owned by some of the poorest people in South Africa. They have the worst HDI, the Human Development Index. They have the worst HDI in the whole of South Africa. And they are the owner of this reserve. And they were with the reserve in 2002, which was formally promulgated in 2004. And we were invited because of our community experience to go and advise them of what to do. Anyway, it took a long time, and finally, about 10 years ago, the area went out to tender. We won the tender, and it's been a promise to this community since 2002 that we would help them. They originally wanted to put a 300-bed hotel here, thinking more beds equals more jobs, and we said, no, let's look at the Tswana model. And we show, so we up the road in Margate, there's a 300-bedded hotel and it employs about 30, 40 people. And we could show, but Botswana 12 bedroomed would employ over 100 people.
Yeah.
And so we kind of talked about this whole thing, and we settled on a model, and which has resulted in Gwegwe Lodge being opened last year. And why it's so important, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, the hotspot theory on the planet. If we conserve the right 5 to 7% of the planet, and we carefully select that 5 to 7%, we can conserve 80% of the world species. This is one of the hotspots. The whole center of endemism along the Pondo coast and interior is a hotspot of about 2,200 species, of which 200 are found nowhere else on the planet.
Sure.
There's a tree called the Pondo ghost bush, which is one tree in a protected area. And Mkabati is this area, and it's the only protected area in the Pondo center of endemism in the Eastern Cape. And so it's so important this area becomes protected. And so out of the 17,000 hectares, 7,400 hectares was reserved. The other land is unoccupied inland. So we've got an opportunity to increase the size of the reserve by the community donating more land. They'll only do it if there's now guaranteed revenue. So we've got a carbon model we busy finalizing, where we'll be extending the reserve, and we're protecting more, and we're in carbon credits for 40 years. So this chunk of land will go back into conservation easement for eternity. And in return, the community is going to get cash for 40 years. And every single family will get a cash payment just before Christmas, once this is concluded. So there's a lot of work to do. And then we're going to introduce a whole lot more species that used to be there, including white rhino. So there's a whole program here. But the other side of it is that in South Africa, the national parks control about 30-something national parks. And they were very clever in the 90s. They got Mavuso Nsamang in, and he took the Botswana and Namibian models, which are out there, and they concessioned off almost all the unwanted areas, all their restaurants. And if you look at South African national parks today, they learned in those days that there were much more pressing needs for conservation. And at the same time, there's going to be much more pressure on the Treasury to provide education, health, housing, which were neglected in old South Africa. So the government realized that the money for conservation is going to dry up. And they had to create an alternative form of revenue for South African national parks. So that's why the Singitas, the Jocks, and all these concessions that arose, there's Hamilton's, there's Indaba, and every single restaurant is all concessioned out. So if you look at the South African national parks, last set of accounts from the last year, they hit 4 billion rands worth of turnover.
Sure.
Only 22% of that came from government. The rest came from park fees, from concession fees, from the Singitas, the Jocks, and all the rest of it. And so they've got this business model for South African national parks. Only three are profitable: Table Mountain, Addo, and Kruger. And those three, and through all those sharing agreements, now fund the losses of the other 20-something. So South African national parks is secure. And that's why it continues to do good year in, year out. They've got the money. The problem is our provincial parks. And provincial parks, there's 50-something provincial parks in South Africa. All but two are in dire straits. And these 50-something parks have 7% of the global biodiversity. They're extremely parks. That's why they were proclaimed. But they don't have the money. So why Gwegwe and Mkombati is so important is that this is the first community ownership. Government is through Eastern Cape Parks is the management of the reserve, and we the private sector party which provides the cash and the jobs. So it's the first real private sector partnership with government on a reserve that is 100% community owned. Out of the 54 whatever provincial parks, the only other one which is getting a chance is De Hoop. Community ownership there, because there was never a community. So but De Hoop was a private sector. We've got Lakawacha there, and there's the De Hoop, the Opstal and the De Hoop collection and Morukuru there. And though we pay something like 8-9% of our turnover and goes to Cape Nature, and that's kind of got a chance. Now Mkombati's got a chance, but its other leg is that it's 100% community owned, and we've got the ability to more than double the size of the reserve. So we made the promise way back in 2002. We've signed, we opened up the lodge. It is an extraordinary lodge. There's no lodge in Africa which offers more diversity of activities on the land. It's got these fantastic rivers which originate in the park. Offshore, we've got the sardine run, which comes through once a year. It is the most wonderful. It's I would say the most beautiful park, certainly in South Africa and maybe elsewhere. It's like being on the Serengeti, and you'll be watching a herd of eland or wildebeest or whatever, and behind that you've got dolphins in the surf and you've got whales offshore. I mean, it's amazing. So amazing thing. But the key thing is that it's that partnership between community, government, conservation, and the private sector. All those things we kind of started learning about in the 70s, and it's now playing good now. So we 2 years ago, and we pay a monthly story, going back to the basics of our dealings with communities. We pay a monthly fee to both the community and to Eastern Cape Parks to help them fund their conservation thing. And then we pay 9% of turnover. So it's a higher one. And we paid our first check to the community for the first year's trading. In fact, it was the 9 months. And we paid them nearly R500,000. So we had a big meeting with our community. And we said, right. And I had one of those sports kind of checks from the bank all printed out. And I had it under my arm. And I said, guys, this is your check. Yeah. And it's our 9%. So what do you think it's going to be? And I went around the Mkombati Land Trust, which owns the land on behalf of the people who were thrown off the land 100 years ago. And the one guy said, 25,000 rand. Another one, that's too much. Another guy said, no, maybe it's 30. The one guy said 50,000.
Wow. Was that the highest guess?
Expectation, yeah. So unroll the check. And remember, in your first 9 months, your turnover is really low. You unroll the check, it was 477,000. And in addition, there was another $250,000 to Eastern Cape Parks. But we rolled out this check. I mean, there were just tears. Were besides themselves. So I said to it, but I rolled it up again. I put it in my arm. I said, okay, this is about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, tonight, you guys are going to discuss what you're going to spend this money on. You're going to sleep on it. You're going to have another meeting tomorrow morning, and then I'll see you at 10 o'clock. And subject to having a decent answer, I will then have to check over. And if you've got Mercedes Benzes as part of your solution, understand I'm not giving you the check. So the meeting, apparently it is robust. They slept. They had the second meeting to confirm really their direction. I met them at 10 o'clock. I said, right, what's this money going to? They said, listen, we've got a bit of admin we've got to cover. I said, fair enough. What's the rest? And we've got 9 primary schools in our district. And they're dividing it amongst every one of the 9 schools to make sure that they will have enough stationery, blackboards and stuff like that. So I said, here's your check. And off. So it was one of those lovely kind of events. Make your heart go good.
Perfect. And listening to this, it's amazing. And I don't think many guests coming and staying at lodges around Africa, not just with you, but around Africa, realize what happens behind the scenes with these sorts of things and where the money goes. A lot of people are paying a lot of money to come to Africa and stay at these beautiful lodges, but to hear these stories and to hear how the money is going into conserving Africa, uplifting communities and things like that is incredible and hugely important. It's very important for us, Colin, when we look at who we're partnering with, we only work with privately owned camps and lodges like yourself that is giving back and doing this amazing work. And so it's important for our guests to know this when they're spending their money coming to Africa, that it is staying in Africa and going into these sorts of places. So, congratulations. Well done.
No, congratulations for you, Sean, because, give me a moment. I just want to get one book.
Sure.
So, way back in 2011, we sent a bunch of researchers around Africa. These were proper MSc guys, Master of Science, and generally a couple. And we had these teams and they went around. So we first did desktop studies, and then we narrowed it down to hundreds of lodges, which we visited individually. And in 2003, this book was published, and we found just 50 lodges, 50, which passed. We had a 102-point checklist. Now, normally when an invigilator goes in, they go to the front and they get a G&T and they're seduced by the elephants at the water hole and go, wow. We made sure they started the sewage and the wastewater and the community. And then once they got through to the 102 points, they could have a gin and tonic at the front and enjoy the elephant.
Yeah.
We only found 50 lodges, which part?
Across Africa.
Across and the Indian Ocean. Now, if we had to do the same thing today, it would be thousands.
Yeah.
And what we found is that, first of all, technology wasn't in our favor. So every lodge, to get a good sewage system was almost impossible. So lodges, the sewage and the black water would go straight into the environment and it'd pollute. Solar was so inefficient that everybody was running generators.
Yeah.
And you run a generator for an hour and you put half a ton of carbon into the atmosphere. And then there was no relationship with communities. And then we sat back, and David Bristow and myself, and the amount of consultation work we did was extraordinary. We must have consulted to hundreds and hundreds of different travel companies. And what we found is that we had the 50 who did good. We had kind of like the ones which were close. We had this vast middle ground of people who love to do good, didn't know. We had the pirates. Now, the pirates are the guys you're paying money offshore, you pay them in Guernsey, and they're using tourism as money laundering. They don't give back. I mean, there are a bunch of very powerful pirates, but then they're not known to be pirates. So that period we found, and we consulted, there were so many people who wanted to do good, but they didn't know how to. And fortunately, at that time, the solar industry got so efficient that there's so many lodges now which run exclusively on solar, and they don't have to have a jetty. They've got a jetty as a backup in case it all fails. They've got great sewage, and so they're not polluting the groundwaters. It's that thing. So we've now had this massive transformation from either not knowing or pirates to now doing good. And we really saw during COVID that without tourism, we're in trouble in Africa because governments can't afford. Governments have got 4-year cycles. They are thinking in the next voting section 4 years' time. So conservation does not deliver votes. So the money for conservation is minimal, and it needs tourism. So when COVID came along, right the way through Africa, wow, we were, as an industry and as conservationists, we were in dire trouble because the parks could not pay for themselves. So we've had a collective thing. So quite often people say to me, now, how can I do good in Africa? Now, we need to put this in context. We've all seen that map of Africa. But generally, when you see a map of Africa, because of the way it's stretched over the globe, North America looks massive, South America looks massive, Russia looks massive, China looks massive. But when you actually go to the globe and you take the whole of America, USA, you put that into Southern Africa, you can take the whole of China, you can put that into a little bit more, you can take the whole of India, the whole of Europe, and they all fit inside Africa with room to spare. And what I'm getting at is that Africa with its pristine soils. Now, people think that this is a carbon story, by the way. Think that carbon gets stored in forests, in the Amazon and the Congo. Yes, they do to a certain degree. But the most carbon gets stored in our oceans. The second most carbon gets stored, sequestered for eternity in the savannas, in soil. So what Africa is, with this huge continent, which is so much bigger than the rest of the first world, we're taking the pollution of the first world and we're taking it out of the atmosphere and we're storing in our soils. And in return, we're giving oxygen to the planet. So Africa, for free, is now processing this carbon. We're storing it, we're giving back oxygen, and we're getting paid for it. And this is a diabolical problem because we have to make sure that Africa's wild places and its parks remain intact, because what happens, as soon as you introduce civilization to these pristine soils, immediately the carbon goes back into the atmosphere. So we've got to keep the carbon sequestered. And the only way we can do that is keep them pristine. How do we keep them pristine? We've got to make sure they remain as parks. How do they remain as parks? They're going to be managed properly. How do we pay for the cost of management? We need tourism. So when people ask me, how can I contribute? I say, please, go on safari in Africa. You will become the greatest conservationist on this planet, except for somebody like the Walton family, who puts billions aside and do amazing stuff. And African parks. I mean, as an individual, just going on safari, what you do, first of all, you got to make sure that you go with a company which has got ethics, like yours. Number one, they will then ensure that you're going to the good guys, the companies who are doing good genuinely. Then your visit pays park fees and conservation fees, and in our situation, CCRs. Then those lodges are employing people. In rural areas, one person in a job can be supporting anything from 8 to 20 people. In a lodge of, say, 100 people, they are supporting 1,000 to 1,500 people outside the park, allowing them to put food on their table every day and send their kids to school. So this whole knock-on effect. So it's an important thing, go on safari. You don't have to go on safari, and you are now doing good for the planet, because it was bleak COVID and we can't go through it again.
Yeah, fascinating. So is this where the safari industry is going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I've got huge optimism that the safari industry is really coming. Well, we still have the Masai Mara mess.
Yeah.
And we've got this massive overcrowding, and it's seasonal. You remember, it's not all year, it's really seasonal. And it's kind of that June, July, August, September period. And we have real problems there with just vehicles all over the show, and we're getting these crossings with 100 people.
Yeah.
I went to one crossing years ago, and I'm never, every time I go back, I love going to Kenya. I love traveling there, but I will always go out of season, and I'll never go and visit a crossing.
Yeah.
So that's go out of season. Number two, go and stay in a lodge, which is in a conservancy, because it's got a canopy element, and the Lari Rock, and that's amazing stuff. Number three, places like Serengeti. It's a nightmare. Vic Falls. I mean, Vic Falls it's a city, so it can handle it. But going along the Zambezi River, it's overcrowding. Mana pools in peak season, overcrowding. So we've got Chobe in peak season, overcrowding. You go to Chobe now, it's absolutely empty. But you go in peak season, it's a nightmare. On Savuti, same story. Kwai, the public area of Kwai. So just make sure that you're not contributing to the chaos. These chaos get all the bad rap, but around them are the most amazing areas which are desperate for guests who come and visit, who offer an incredible wildlife experience. And just avoid these kind of areas of congestion, and you'll have the most wonderful time, and you'll be contributing at the same time, even though you don't know you're contributing.
What fascinates me is people living these hectic lifestyles, and you spoke about Hong Kong and New York, and you're in traffic and it's go, and then you're coming to Africa and you're having to sit in a queue to try and get a glimpse of a lion. That's not what it's about. So we, as a rule, we don't sell Chobe, we don't sell Maremi, we don't sell the Masai Mara, we don't sell the Ngoro Crater, purely because of that. It's not great for the wildlife. And it's not a great experience for our guests who are wanting to come to Africa and have this peaceful wilderness experience. We send them into the private conservancies, like where you guys have your camps, and it's a much better experience.
Oh, but Sean, you do one other thing. You tailor make every safari.
Absolutely.
If you and the beauty of tailor making safaris today, it doesn't cost extra. So this amazing thing, people still buy packages, and the packages are where the problems are. When itineraries are tailor-made for people, and if a person says, listen, I'm happy to have 100 vehicles around a sighting, and I accept that, then it's fine. But most people are looking for the real, authentic African safari.
Absolutely.
And packages don't do it. When you buy a package off the shelf, but we can book a tailor-made safari, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You can do a tailor, reasonably budget one, or you can go top end, whatever. But the key thing is to have your safari tailor-made for your needs.
Absolutely.
And good flight connections every day. It's for no extra cost. So I think that's my message: is travel to Africa, book through a reputable company which does good, and make sure it's tailor-made. And then you're in good shape, and your company does all of those.
Thank you. Well, Colin, this has been fascinating. Absolutely loved this. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I know you're busy, but absolutely fascinating. And we love sending our guests your way, and feedback has always been phenomenal. So thank you to each of your teams on the ground. I know it's, as you said, privately family run, but the job on the ground is phenomenal. The service, the guiding, wildlife, and the experiences. So thank you.
Yeah, Sean, thank you for your support. Thanks for the opportunity. Be well.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks.
Wow, I hope you found that as inspiring as I did. In the next episode, I travel to Gorongosa to speak to the CEO of Gorongosa Safaris, Doug Flynn.